Right, so we are extremely fortunate to be living here in a community where we have a center, right? We have something that our entire life revolves around of. What do I do in the day? What do we see in the week? Your entire life revolves around the seva plan. I have this and 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 this to do. Everything else has to benefit that. So your life is completely around your service to the deity. And that way there's no way that you, well, of course there's a way, but it's much more difficult for you to forget Krishna because your life revolves around him. Word for word. Raja Uvacha. The king replied. Sutaha. Son. Me. My. Balakaha, tender boy. Brahman, my dear Brahmana. Strainena, one who is too addicted to his wife. Akarunatmanaha, one who is very hard of heart and without mercy. Nirvasitaha, is banished. Panchavarsha, although the boy is 5 years old. Saha, with. Matra, mother. Mahan, great personality. Kavihi, devotee. Translation. The king replied, O best of the Brahmanas, I am very much addicted to my wife, and I am so fallen that I have abandoned all merciful behavior, even to my son, who is only 5 years old. I have banished him and his mother, even though he is a great soul and a great devotee. Purport. In this verse, there are some specific words which are to be understood very carefully. The king said that since he was very much addicted to his wife, he had lost all mercy. That is the result of becoming too affectionate towards women. The king had 2 wives. The first wife was Suniti, and the second was Suruchi. He was too attached to his second wife. However, he was too much attached to his second wife. So he could not behave well with Dhruva Maharaj. That was the cause of Dhruva's leaving home to perform austerities. Although, as a father, the king was affectionate towards his son, he minimized his affection for Dhruva Maharaj because he was too much addicted to his second wife. Now he was repenting that both Dhruva Maharaj and his mother Suniti were practically banished. Dhruva Maharaj went to the forest, and since his mother was being neglected by the king, she was therefore almost banished also. The king repented having banished his boy, for Dhruva was only 5 years old, and a father should not banish his wife and children or neglect their maintenance. Repentant over his neglect of both Suniti and her son, he was morose, and his face appeared withered. According to Manusmriti, one should never desert his wife and children. In a case where the wife and children are disobedient and do not follow the principles of home life, they are sometimes given up. But in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, he was not applicable because Dhruva Maharaj was very mannerly and obedient. Moreover, he was a great devotee. Such a person is never to be neglected. Yet the king was obliged to banish him. Now he was very sorry. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mama jnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurmitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet mukam karoti vachalam pangulam gayate girim yakripatamaham bande Shri Gurum dinatarinam paramananda madhavam Shri Chaitanyamishwaram Nama Om Vishrupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Indridumna Swami Tinamine Namo Prabhupada Pridasaya Jagannatha Yatra Nandamurtaye Bhakta Sukena Krishna Kirtanena Narasimhena Rakshataya Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so today we have a very wonderful verse which gives us a lot of instruction, and since so many descriptions are given here about proper householder life and the duties of a proper householder and how one can avoid the situation of Maharaj Uttanapada by not becoming too much addicted to home, family, wife, family affairs. There's many lessons we can learn here, and simply by digging just a little bit into Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, so many purports and verses come up in this connection, right? This is a great subject matter, right? And actually there's a class on YouTube you can find by Gaura Govinda Goswami, Gaura Govinda Maharaj, on this verse exactly, and he's pulling verse after verse after verse, you know how Gaura Govinda Maharaj does, and he's just hammering the point home. It's very wonderful. You have to listen. So you can listen after the class. It'll be way better than this. Maybe we should just turn it on now. Okay. So there's a few different points we can bring in here. One is that in the purport, Prabhupada's mentioning how a father should never give up the maintenance of his wife and his children, right, out of neglect, right? And then he mentions here how in some cases where the children or wife are being disobedient or not following the principles, right, then they can be given up. In this connection, there's a few statements, or should I say maxims, from Niti Sastra and the Dharma Sastra, which basically in this connection show us in what case this can be applicable or should be even considered. It's, right, there's two from Chanakya Pandit. So one is that for the sake of a family, an individual can be sacrificed. For the sake of a town, a family can be sacrificed. For the sake of a nation, right, a city can be sacrificed. And for the sake of one's soul or salvation, the whole world must be sacrificed, right? So if, let's say, some family is in danger, an individual might have to be sacrificed. Some boat is sinking. If one person doesn't get off, the whole boat's going to sink. Everyone will die. Okay, so there's different ideas. But when it comes to someone's salvation, when it comes to someone's soul, liberation, or going back to God, at the time of death, you must give up everything and everyone. Right? When it comes time to it, you're going to have to give up everything you ever had, everyone you ever loved, and you must think only of Krishna. So Chanakya Pandit is so expertly putting it in this way that we can understand the circumstances. So when one's family life becomes a hindrance to one's devotional service, not in the way that you've neglected, it means that you have not done your duty and you've tried everything and yet you're still unable to, with the permission or with the guidance of your spiritual master, then one may consider doing this. But this is only in very extreme situations, and that means that one has already failed in his previous attempts, right? And everything else he's tried to do. Because when it comes to the soul, then one could do it. It should not be out of frustration. Oh, you know, I've tried and this and that, I'm sick with this family, then I'm going to go take sannyas. 2 years you go somewhere else and find someone else and think, oh no, with this Mataji it'll be different. With this family it'll be different. No, this is absolute nonsense. Yeah? Another verse from Chanakya Pandit says, one should save money against hard times and save his wife at the sacrifice of his riches. But invariably, one should save his soul even at the cost of his wife and riches. Right? So you can save riches to prepare for hard times, and you have to sacrifice your riches to save your wife. Let's say she's sick, or so many different situations may arise. But when it comes to saving your own soul, you're going back to Godhead, you're going to have to sacrifice both. You're going to have to sacrifice everything. So we can understand from these maxims that only when it comes to spirit, going back to Godhead, then this idea of sacrificing everything is used, and it's perfectly proper because Krishna is the maintainer and destroyer of everything. So he will take care of everything if one fully surrenders to him. Only when one fully surrenders to him, then you can say, yes, Krishna will take care of my wife, he'll take care of my children and everything. In this connection, I can say from my own personal experience that my mother, she passed away like 9 years ago now, almost to the day. And when it was time, when she finally, I wouldn't say finally, but when she took that decision to simply go to Mayapur, chant, be in the association of devotees, and not try anything else. She's tried everything to get rid of the cancer she had. She finally decided not to give up anything. You could see this resolution come upon her that was just completely unshakable. So many people, myself, my brother, everyone coming, you know, of course pouring our eyes out, crying, since we're going to miss her so much. But there was not a drop in her eye because she was convinced that Krishna will take care. She said, don't worry, Krishna will take care. She would just pat us on our head, say, it's okay, everything will be fine. But you think in like a material situation, a son saying goodbye to a mother would be the destruction for the mother. But there was such resolution in her, and you could see it. It was almost like shocking. This person who I previously related to in such a close way is now a pure devotee, and it was kind of like all of a sudden there was this distance. Like, wow, this is no longer a material body, this is a devotee. Like, it was very shocking. And that experience gave me this understanding that when it comes time to it and you fully surrender to Krishna, there's no more worry. It's not even that you're giving anything up because you realize it was never yours. That makes sense? You realize that, no, there's nothing to give up. I was never doing anything for this person. Krishna was doing it, and therefore, Krishna will continue to do just like he's been doing, whether through me or through someone else. You understand? So we cannot imitate Raganuga Bhakti because this is something that naturally comes when one comes to that stage of understanding and surrender to Krishna. It was amazing. It was really a really amazing experience to see that happening. You hear about it all the time, right? Purport after purport after purport. But to see that detachment, and not even detachment without affection, it was full affection, it was full yes, but it was full understanding that Krishna will take care. Krishna is going to take care. Everything will be fine because Krishna will take care. And from that day on, that was like 4 months before she actually passed. It was, slowly the condition was getting worse. But from that day on, it was my service to take care of her, like, take her from bed to the bathroom, clean her, everything I was doing. And from that day on, it was really like no longer that I was with my mother, it was like I was getting a chance to serve a great devotee in her final days. It was really a very change of heart, because that experience was so shocking. Everything will be okay, and it was so convincing. Krishna will take care. Right? So when it comes time for us to go back to Godhead, we're going to have to give everything up in that same way. But when we're at that stage of surrender, we'll understand we're not actually giving anything up because it never was ours. Does that make sense? Yeah? So Prabhupada very perfectly puts it here, that only when it comes to that situation, then it can be considered. And therefore it's not imitated. It's not whimsically done. Right? Apart from this, he's he's driving home the point of being too much addicted to wife, to family affairs. And then in this connection, so many purports are given about Grihastha and Grihamedi, right? There's that, so many different verses are describing the difference between a Grihastha and a Grihamedi, and how one can avoid falling into the endless trap of Grihamedi, right? A Grihastha means he who knows everything, but he is not so advanced. But he wants to live with wife and children, but for Krishna consciousness. That is Grihastha. And those who are not Krishna conscious, simply living like animals, and has got children and wife, they are animals. They are Grihamedi. The Grihastha means he is making the best of a bad bargain, and the Grihamedi is an animal. Does that make sense? The Grihastha, yeah, very, very heavy. The Grihastha, he understands he has these anarthas. It's the best of a bad bargain. So he's living with his wife, with his children, but he's focusing his life and everything around Krishna consciousness, trying to purify this anartha he has. The Grihamedi, on the other hand, his life, everything is simply about house, wife, children, and material enjoyment. That's the only, therefore, Prabhupada said he's animal. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. There's no other consideration. Whatever benefits those 4 things, he does. Whatever doesn't benefit, he doesn't do. Yeah, so Prabhupada says very strictly, he's an animal. Prabhupada also distinguishes the word ashrama. It's not only grihastha, ashrama, right? Someone who's in the ashram of grihastha. What does ashrama mean? Prabhupada says, means a situation for spiritual cultivation. If it's not a situation for spiritual cultivation, it's not an ashram. So brahmacharya ashram, he's becoming Krishna conscious. Grihastha ashram, he's becoming Krishna conscious. Vanaprastha ashram and sannyasa ashram. All 4 ashramas are meant for spiritual cultivation. So in Grihastha ashram, it's the best of a bad bargain. You are in a situation of material enjoyment because you have these anarthas that you have to conquer. But you are trying to conquer them. Therefore, you're in an ashram, and you're focusing on spiritual cultivation. Right? In the purport to Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 2.1.2, Srila Prabhupada writes, in the very first paragraph, he writes, it's quite a long one, so please pay attention. In the revealed scriptures, there are 2 nomenclatures for the householder life. One is Grihastha and the other is Grihamedi. The Grihasthas are those who live together with wife and children, but live transcendentally for realizing the ultimate truth. The Grihamedis, however, are those who live only for the benefit of family members, extended or centralized, and thus they are envious of others. The word Mehdi indicates jealousy of others. The Grihamedis, being interested in family affairs only, are certainly envious of others. Therefore, the Grihamedi is not on good terms with other Grihamedis, and in extended form, one community or society or nation is not on good terms with other counterparts of selfish interest. In this age of Kali, all householders are jealous of one another, because they are blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth. They have many subject matters for hearing, political science, social, economic, and so on. But due to poor fund of knowledge, they set aside the question of ultimate miseries of life, namely miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Factually, the human life is meant for making the ultimate solution to birth, death, old age, and disease. But the Grihamedis are illusioned by the material nature, forget everything about self-realization. The ultimate solution to the problem of life is to go back home, back to Godhead. And thus, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the miseries of life, existence, birth, death, old age, and disease are removed. Yeah, so Prabhupada here, he's giving us something I didn't know before, but Mehdi means jealousy, means envy, right? And it makes so much sense. In a Grihamedi household, all they're doing is trying to be better than some other family, be better than some other, right? The husband is envious of the wife's enjoyment, the wife's envious of the husband is always looking at other families being, oh, I have to be better than them. They have a car, I need a car. They have a house, I need a house. My house is this big, their house is that big. It's non-stop, simply trying to outdo some other family. And the nation is doing the same thing. The Prabhupada says extended sex life, right? Family, bigger family, community, nation, race, right? It's all centered around sex life. And we're simply we're always envious and we're trying to be better, trying to do more in material enjoyment than someone else. So this Grihamedi life is such an endless pit of struggle to satisfy this itch. Prabhupada describes sex life as an itch of the skin, that you're simply trying to scratch it and satisfy it, trying to, friction to satisfy the sex, but it just gets more and more and more and it never ends. So that is Grihamedi life, right? Prabhupada at the bottom of this purport, he says, one should not therefore become a Grihamedi, simply existing for envying others. You're simply existing to envy others. That's your whole purpose of existence, one after another. And what's funny enough, I was thinking that some people in marketing schemes, like people who research marketing for advertisements and like that, they must have read this purport because they're utilizing it to the very greatest. When they show something on TV, right? What's the first thing? A family enjoying a house, enjoying a TV, right? So you see, oh wow, I envy that family in the TV. I'm going to copy them. I'm going to get the same thing or better. These people aren't foolish. Maya isn't foolish, right? They're very careful and they utilize this nature of the material world to such a perfect extent to be able to entice you to buy what they want, to take what they want, to fall into the trap that they want. Right? It's amazing. It's amazing. They'll use it exactly to that way. So we cannot fall into this trap of being envious. And how can we stop or not fall into this trap of being envious in Grihamedi life and become a Grihamedi? Is by keeping Krishna in the center. Prabhupada stresses this point again and again. A Grihasta means one must have deity worship in the house. One must keep Krishna in the center. Right? There's so many purports came up, but I'll just read a few. Right. It is therefore recommended that initiated devotees follow the principles of Narada Pancharatra by worshipping the deity in the temple. Especially for householder devotees who are opulent in material possessions, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. An opulent householder devotee who does not engage in his hard-earned money in the service of the Lord is called a miser. One should not engage paid brahmanas to worship the deity if one does not personally worship the deity, but engages paid servants instead. He is considered lazy. His worship of the deity is called artificial. An opulent householder can collect luxurious paraphernalia for deity worship, and consequently, for householder devotees, the worship of the deity is compulsory. Compulsory, Prabhupada says, right? It's not an option. In our Krishna conscious movement, there are brahmacharis, grihastas, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. but a deity worship in the temple should be performed especially by householders. The brahmacharis can go with the sannyasis to preach, and the vanaprasthas should prepare themselves for the next status of renounced ordered life, sannyas. Grihastha devotees, however, are generally engaged in material activities, and therefore, if they do not take to deity worship, their fall down is positively assured. It's assured. Yes, it's done. It's a done deal. If you do not engage in deity worship, to some extent, you're right, to whatever extent you can, then your fall down is positively assured. Deity worship means following the rules and regulations precisely. That will keep one steady in devotional service. Generally, householders have children, and then the wives of the householders should be engaged in caring for the children, just as women acting as teachers care for the children in a nursery school. Grihastha devotees must adopt the Archana Vidhi, or deity worship, according to the suitable arrangements and directions given by the spiritual master. Regarding those unable to take the deity worship in the temple, there are following statement in the Agni Purana. Any householder devotee circumstantially unable to worship the deity must at least see deity worship. In this way, he may achieve success also. The special purpose of deity worship is to keep oneself always pure and clean. Grihastha devotees should be actual examples of cleanliness. Right? So this is one of the reasons deity worship. It keeps you pure and clean, both in mind and body, within the house, because Krishna is the center. This is one of the reasons. But there's so many different reasons why deity worship is so beneficial for Grihastha life in particular, is because one understands that one is no longer the center. Right? One has to continue one's sadhana because there's someone you have to care for. And by understanding Krishna is a person that you have to care for, then everything becomes so much more rapid. Your progress in Krishna consciousness becomes much more rapid by understanding Krishna as a person. He has to wake up at a certain time. He has to be fed. He has to be taken care of. He has to be cleaned. He has to be dressed. Right? And so Agni Purana says if one is unable, let's say one is not initiated, one doesn't have deities, or for whatever reason out of poverty, one is not able to take care of deities, he should at least see deity worship. What does that mean? He should live close enough to a temple that he can take part in all the daily activities of the temple, and in that way achieve success. Right? So we are extremely fortunate to be living here in a community where we have a center. Right? We have something that our entire life revolves around of. What do I do in the day? What do we see in the week? Your entire life revolves around the seva plan. I have this and 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 this to do. Everything else has to benefit that. So your life is completely around your service to the deity. And that way there's no way that you, well, of course there's a way, but it's much more difficult for you to forget Krishna because your life revolves around him. Everything in the house, Prabhupada also in many other places stresses that every householder should have a Śrīmad Bhāgavatam set in his house. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam inside the house. Why? Right? Even if one doesn't read it, one will see it and remember Krishna. Everything is about stimulating one's remembrance of Krishna so one does not forget him. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. So if your house has deities, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you have to wake up, take care of them, dress them, clean them, serve them, feed them, how much more of the day is left for you to be not Krishna conscious? Much less. Much less. Right? In another purport, Prabhupada is talking about Grihamedi. He says his whole life is his apartment, his house. All he thinks about is decorating and cleaning and fixing and getting better arrangements and doing one thing after another, getting better clothes, better bedding, better everything, simply for himself. When one has a deity in the house, it no longer becomes about that. When one has a deity that one has to tend to or one has to come and take part in the programs, it's no longer about him. And therefore one can be taken out of this intense material enjoyment periodically during the day and realigned. One's mind can be realigned in what's important, what's the true goal of life. Right? We all have those instances during the day, maybe once a day, once a week, depending, right? Where we actually like, wow, okay, none of this matters. Sometimes we're so overburdened with simple little things that makes us very stressed. But if we come to a situation where we're able to clear all that and think, okay, what is a true, wow, like right here in Bhagavatam class sometimes you're sitting and you're like, okay, everything else is not so important. Everything else becomes very minimal. And one realigns oneself, realigns one's thoughts and thinks, okay, that is a true goal of life. How am I chasing that rather than, how to get some extra sleep or how to make sure my dhoti is dry for the next day or how, someone stealing my dhoti, whatever may come into these small little problems then you take the broader picture and you're like, oh, okay, I can calm down a little bit and actually think, what am I doing for that goal? So by keeping Krishna in the house and by following deity worship in the house, one is forced to remember Krishna much more and not forget him much more. And in that way, the chances of falling into the pit of grihamedi, becoming envious, simply thinking about one's own sense enjoyment, is diminished. That makes sense? Right? So for grihastas, it's so important, deity worship and following, that the activity of sense control, sense restraint, right? Even though one is in the association of the objects of material enjoyment, one has to restrain himself and follow the rules and regulations given to us so we're able to continue progressing and keep it an ashrama, not a grihamedi household. Right? And for those brahmacharis who are interested in the future becoming grihastas, being a good brahmachari is integral. Only good brahmacharis can make good grihastas. It's no other way. There's no other way, because in a grihasta life, one will be absolutely, how would I say, when you have false expectations and they're not met, what do you call that? Frustrated. Yes, one will be absolutely frustrated because you'll think that, no, now everything will be okay. No, it's not like that. The more you're able to be, I'm not going to say Atmarama, but the more you're able to be self-satiated with your Krishna consciousness, the less you'll have expectations of material enjoyment in Grihastha ashram. And when they don't come, you won't be so frustrated and you'll be able to understand that this is Grihastha ashram. This is what it's like. This is what association with material enjoyment is. You take it for what it is. When it comes, it's great. When it doesn't come, it's also fine because the brahmachari has that experience. The more you're able to sacrifice your own needs and interests for Krishna, for service, the more you'll be less frustrated when you have to sacrifice your own needs for the service of your family, for the service of the greater community. All right? So only good brahmacharis can make good grihastas. So for those who are brahmacharis now and looking forward or looking in the future that yes, one day I'll join the ashram, don't worry about that. That time will come. For now, focus on being the best brahmachari you can, dependent on the spiritual master, dependent on the rules and regulations, dependent on the authorities you have. And you should only think of one thing: service, study of Srila Prabhupada's books, and how to cultivate your own Krishna consciousness to the max. Right? Then you will have a strong foundation, and you'll be able to actually be a grihasta. Yeah? Not a grihamedi. So it's extremely important, being a very good brahmachari. That's the only way. And if you're a very, very good brahmachari, then you understand the grihasta ashram is simply a place of suffering, and jump over that step. Right? But if you do have to go through it, then you'll go through it with the proper mindset. You'll enter it with the proper expectations, understanding that there's no difference. There's no difference. It's not La La Land. Yeah? It's also a place of suffering. It's a place of greater understanding, greater sacrifice. And this connection to something that came to mind when Prabhupada is talking about householders collecting very opulent things for deity worship, right? Opulent paraphernalia. There's actually, I forgot where it is. I was trying to look for the purport. But anyway, so many things I hear in my time in Krishna consciousness, I don't remember exactly, but there's a description of different paraphernalia that should be used by the different ashramas. And so brahmacharis should use brass or copper for deity worship. Grihastas should use silver. And sannyasis, it says they can use whatever, so that way they can use gold because they're not attached, right? But it says that brahmacharis should use copper. And I was wondering why brahmacharis should use copper, but one day, in the millions of times we're sitting there polishing the paraphernalia, I was like, oh, that's why you use copper, because you have to clean it every day, right? Copper, you sprinkle some water in it, you leave it 3 hours and there's stains, right? Unless it's perfectly cleaned and dried, it gets dirty. So your effort to keep the paraphernalia clean is so much greater that you're training a much higher standard of cleanliness. Then later when you have silver, it's a simple wipe and a polish and it's clean, it stays clean. But copper is such a hassle. We're there with a mountain of paraphernalia and oil lamp scrubbing, every week, 2-3 hours. And I was like, oh, that's why. You engage more in devotional service. Anyway, something that came to mind. It was funny. Okay, so in this connection, I thought it would be helpful to speak about different examples we have in history of great devotees who were householders, even kings, in this case a king, who kept deity worship as the sole center of his life, and because of that, he achieves Krishna Bhakti in householder life. And the example is given by Rajman Singh. Who has heard of Rajman Singh? Yes, the king of Jaipur, right? Rajaman Singh was the king of Jaipur who assisted the devotees of Vrindavan in protecting the three deities, Govindaji, Gopinath, Madan Mohan, by protecting them in Jaipur. He sacrificed everything for them. He built an entire new city for them, right? And he was so devoted, actually, and just on a side note, he was a personal disciple of Raghunath Das Goswami, right? Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, not Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. He was a proper devotee, full devotee. And he would sacrifice everything. He was a full king. He would go on wars and everything, but he was still a perfect Vaishnava. And there's actually a letter when Govindaji finally came to Jaipur, well, to Amer, right? He had a beautiful place called something Vrindavan. Gupta Vrindavan? I think it was Gupta Vrindavan. Anyway, he made this beautiful palace with gardens and everything, mimicking the palaces that were in Vrindavan. And he brought Govindaji there and put them inside this beautiful, beautiful temple, Amer. Beautiful. It's in the middle of a lake. There's gardens. It's amazing what he made for them. And then what he was planning to start doing is build a city, Jaipur, that we all know now, right? He was going to build this city. And Govindaji came to him in a dream and said, I see you're building a beautiful city and you have a palace. You'll have a palace there. Don't you think you can find a room in your palace for me also? Govindaji came. He just finished building this beautiful temple for Govindaji. After so much hassle, it took like 12 years for them to come from Vrindavan to Jaipur, to Amer, right? It took so much hassle hiding them. You think about the distance, even through bullock cart, to go from Vrindavan to Jaipur shouldn't take one more than maybe 2 months. Maybe, like really relaxed, right? In a car it takes, 6 hours? Right? It's not that far, but because they were in constant pursuit, they would hear the Muslims are coming to find them. They heard, they're somewhere. They would immediately go into a village. And sometimes they would stay in that village in a small hut for 2-3 years until they were sure there was no danger, then get out again and move a little bit more, again into a forest, again into a village. Right? It took 12 years for them to go. The small distance from Vrindavan to Jaipur. They were so careful. And so finally, he built this beautiful palace. Now Govindaji is asking, you don't think there's some room in your palace for me in Jaipur? So Man Singh was very confused. He didn't know what to do. So he wrote to, at that time, was the top Vaishnava alive, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he wrote to him and said, I had this dream. What do you think I should do? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote back to him and said, yes, it is correct. And it is proper for you to install Govindaji in your mahal. The word mahal is used. Mahal means your house. Right? He can live in your house, because this is very important, and this letter was used later on, because later on when the threat of the invasion was finished, the devotees wanted to bring Govindaji, Gopinath and Madan Mohan back to Vrindavan. But this letter from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur very clearly stated Mahal, and it says that the deities are now your property. Right? And so that letter was used as proof that no, they stay with us because they are ours now. They are part of our family. They've entered into our mahal. They've entered into our home. They're not going to leave. We don't send our kids away. That was the mood of the kings of Jaipur at that time. And so Rajman Singh, when he got that order from Govindaji in his palace, right outside his palace, or at that time actually they were staying in his room, in his chambers. But later on, he made, the temple that's right outside his palace. When he would come out of his bedroom, he could look straight across this little pond, straight into Govindaji's temple, straight into the altar. It was the first thing he would see. He just has to come out in his courtyard and he could see the deities, full darshan. Right? So, but when they were staying with him, right, when they were still building Jaipur and making it into the great fort that was full protected, there was many pastimes, and he had a very strict sadhana. That in the morning, sometimes even 4 hours, I think, was the period that was given for his own personal puja. He would go inside the altar room, he would lock the doors, and no one, under no circumstances, could disturb him. And if someone would disturb him, the penalty was death. If someone would disturb him during his puja. He was so strict, because he understood that if I do not give this time to Krishna, There's no chance of me being able to do anything for my citizens. Right? There's no chance. So I'm doing this for my city. I'm doing this, well, of course, his pure bhakti, but he understood that this is unless I am Krishna conscious, what chance is there for me to make anyone else? So this is something he dedicated for his deities. And so one day when he was doing his puja, the Muslims, they found out that he had this rule, right? And so they took advantage, they attacked at that time, during his puja. And so immediately, the courtiers, the ministers, they weren't sure what to do. They have to tell him, they have to, so they very carefully, ringing a bell, they managed to get his attention. They said, my dear Man Singh, we're under attack. And Rajman Singh said, I don't care. This is my time for Govinda. It's his desire. Whatever will happen. But it was his arrangement. They came at this time, and he knows my vow. He wouldn't make me break my vow. I am not going to do it. He didn't do anything. He stayed. He continued doing his puja. So the ministers are freaking out. They're not sure what to do. All of a sudden, they see the king's white horse with Rajman Singh jumping out of the palace, just like full speed with his swords and everything ready. And so all the soldiers immediately struggled to get back and to follow him in time. And Rajman Singh just straight into the enemy's army and started fighting like a madman. And all the army was so enlivened seeing their king taking charge in such an amazing way. They were going and fighting with him, and what an amazing victory they had. But while the fight, Man Singh was stabbed in the thigh with a lance. Very deep cut in his thigh. And so the battle continued. Immediately he ran back home. He was taken quickly back home. And the ministers came following him, and they came looking for him. And as soon as they entered into the palace, Rajman Singh came out of the altar room fully ready for a war. He's like, let's go to war, let's go fight. And they said, what are you talking about? We just won, we just finished, the war is finished. What are you doing here? What do you mean? And he's like, no, I didn't fight, I was doing puja. So what are you talking about? You were just there leading the army the entire time, fighting so courageously. You got injured in your thigh. And they looked at his thigh, there was nothing. He was in clean clothes, ready to go for battle. And they're but you were there, you took your horse, everything was ready. And so he was wondering what happened. He went back into the altar room and he saw that Govindaji had blood dripping from his thigh onto his dhoti. Govindaji himself took the form of Rajman Singh and went and fought instead of Rajman Singh, just to show his protection of his devotees. So this is the ability of deity worship. Full surrender to deity worship in the home can bring you. Right? No surrender. No compromise. And of course, Rajman Singh fainted. He was so pleased. He was so with such gratitude to the Lord. He did huge festivals. And all the citizens, you can imagine, all those warriors who had the great fortune to fight with Govindaji in battle, they all became pure devotees. All of those, very fortunate Muslims who had to be killed by Govindaji definitely went back to Vaikuntha, right? But such an amazing pastime. You can imagine what life that brought into Jaipur at that time. And to this day, if you go to Jaipur, you'll see the devotion that the city has to Govindaji is something very natural and very awe-inspiring, because it's so integral to their being. They won't think their day complete unless they take darshan of Govindaji. To this day, you'll see most of the citizens, they wake up early and they're there for Mangalarti. There's a group of at least like 1,000 devotees, just on a normal day, Mangalarti. And they sing this song. If you ever get a chance to hear it, I'm always looking for the recording, I can never find it. But everyone knows the song, and everyone sings it together. It's not like we do call and response. Everyone sings it together. And there's such devotion and love in that song, in the way that they sing it, and it's so personal. Govindaji is the center of their life, right? To this day, especially among the community who have those integral cultural values instilled in them through generations. So to this day, the interaction of Govindaji with the residents of Jaipur is amazing, right? And later on, there's many pastimes, but later on, many devotees were saying, that, we shouldn't go to Jaipur because it's not Vrindavan, and one should simply stay in Vrindavan and not go see, this is just a king's city, etc., etc. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladevi Vibhushan very clearly stated that wherever Govindaji, Gopinath, Radha, Madan Mohan are, that is Vrindavan. Right? And so there shouldn't be you shouldn't think a difference. You shouldn't think. It shouldn't think that Vrindavan's any less because they're not there, and you shouldn't think that Jaipur is any less because it's not Vrindavan. They're non-different because Govindaji decided to stay there, and he's entrapped there due to the love of his devotees. Right? So it's a very beautiful pastime, and there's so many other pastimes of Govindaji with Rajman Singh, Govindaji with many other devotees. Madan Mohan, there's actually a pastime in the future where, because Govindaji, Madan Mohan, and Gopinath all were together in Jaipur at one point. But then one of the daughters of the Singh family of the kings of Jaipur, she fell so much deeply in love with Madan Mohanji that she surrendered her entire life to them. She wouldn't leave the temple. She would stay all day there making garlands, singing for them nonstop. So when it came time for them to get married, for the daughter to get married, there was an arranged marriage with the king of Karoli, which is quite a distance away. It's another city, with the prince. And the daughter said, I'm not going to go unless Madan Mohanji comes with me. I'm not going to go. Right? And so the king, again, not sure what to do, wrote to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and said, this is the situation. I need to send my daughter in marriage, but she doesn't want to go without Madan Mohanji. Right? And so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, no, it's okay. She has such intense love for the Lord. And so they even designed a strategic plan of how to make sure that this love is true. And she would be able to recognize, just like you recognize who should be your husband in the old days Swayamvars, they devised a plan how to do this and check if she really knows Madan Mohan, and she'll be able to detect him. So they put the three deities in a line inside a very dark room, completely dark, and they got her to go in, and she had to pick, first and foremost, Madan Mohanji. So she was walking by the three deities, and Madan Mohan, he's playing, he has, there, right? He has his hands like this. And so Madan Mohanji, when she was walking by, he put his hand forward to touch her shoulder. And not to this day, there's not a flute that fits properly in Madan Mohan's hand because his hand is a little bit more forward. He reached out to touch her shoulder. And so she was able to choose that this is Madan Mohan, right? And so they took Madan Mohan with them in the bridal party, and Madan Mohan went in the palanquin, and the princess walked behind the palanquin. She didn't go in the palanquin. Generally, when you're going for a wedding, the bride sits in the palanquin, but no, she put Madan Mohanji in the palanquin. And even after she got married, she would just spend her whole day. It was just more like a formal marriage, simply for, very fortunately, the husband also was a great devotee, but she would just spend her whole day inside the palace, inside the temple. And only a few years ago, until a few years ago, there was a weekly time in which the queen, since the time of that princess, there was a weekly time where that princess had private darshan with Madan Mohanji. The temple would be closed, no one was allowed in, and only the princess and Madan Mohanji would have a couple of hours alone, just her and the deities. And it was kept only until a couple of years ago. And whatever princess was there now, she wanted to be more diplomatic and not create such division between the Muslim community and Hindu community and Jain community. So she didn't want to show that favoritism, and so she stopped the tradition. But it was just until 20 years ago it was kept every week. The queen or the princess would go to the temple and have that private darshan with Madan Mohan, keeping in the culture of that previous princess. So there's many beautiful pastimes of great householders keeping the deity as their complete life and soul and their center. And through this way, if one is so Krishna conscious and keeping the Lord in the center, everything is first to him, everything is first his, it's very difficult for one to actually forget Krishna. And in that way, one is constantly pulled out of the depth of the well of Grihamedi life. One will periodically get completely entangled and forget everything. But by the association of devotees, by coming to the temple, by taking part in deity worship and performing deity worship at home, one is therefore reminded and pulled out, and put back on the straight and narrow. No, this is the path. This is the path. Don't stray. This is the path. Yeah? So for those of you who are grihastas, can reliven your Krishna consciousness in your house, or of course we're here in a community, and Kunashingadev is our center. right? Everything should be first and foremost to Him. Our service, everything, our life is surrounded through Him. And for those of you who are brahmacharis planning for grihastha ashram in the future at some point, focus on your your brahmachari life, and in that way you have a chance to cross over the ocean of material enjoyment that grihastha life can be, and get through it, understanding and purify that anartha that we have for material enjoyment, and therefore come out as a vanaprastha very happy and not thinking you left anything behind. Prabhupada in a sannyas ceremony, I think to my Guru Maharaj, he was saying, he said, now preach boldly as a sannyasi and never look back thinking you left anything of worth behind. Never look back, never think, oh, I could have done that, or maybe with someone else, or maybe in another situation, right? That is the problem. Then, no, maybe it could have been better. No, never look back thinking you left anything of worth behind. Yeah? Yeah, it's just like Prabhupada also would say, I've been everywhere and seen everything, and my advice to you is take sannyas, right? There's nothing of worth in this material world. Yeah? So we'll finish there. If there's any comments or questions, please. There's the mic.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I read one purport recently, which was related to envy, and it's just one statement here. Because they have the highest, it's about ultimately a devotee, because they have the highest aim of life, going back to Godhead, they are never envious of anyone. So this implies that as soon as I have understood that this is what my life is meant for, I will never be envious again.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I also heard a few lectures by now, and sometimes it's described like this, that only when you have achieved full love of God, you are free from envy. So, it doesn't seem to be such a simple thing to have that highest aim of life. And philosophically it's so easy to read about it and to say, okay, this is our worldview. So, but maybe you can speak something about what does that mean? What is Godhead and how to get there? I mean, there's some
how to become fully Krishna conscious.
No, what is Godhead?
What is Goloka Vrindavan? What is Krishna?
And where are we going? What is that highest aim of life? Because if as long as we are envious, as long as we have a trace of envy, it means that we didn't understand fully what it means.
Yes.
So maybe you can tell anything about it.
This is a very perfect analogy, that as long as one's envy means one still thinks that someone has something better than what I have, right? Someone has something of value, someone has something that I want. And so when one reaches the highest goal, then there's no one who has anything that you want, because you have achieved what you were hankering for, and you have satisfied all your desires by Krishna Bhakti, right? Yesterday I was listening to a class by Ranath Maharaj, and he was talking about how this material world, or the soul's desire to be happy or for bliss, for enjoyment, is like an empty ocean. You imagine an ocean bed. Yeah? It's empty. And material enjoyment is like a drop. Yeah? So we're trying to fill this ocean with a drop. And you're thinking that you can put the drop, and it doesn't matter how many drops you put in, you're going to try to fill up this ocean. It's not going to be able to be filled. But Krishna Bhakti is an ocean of nectar, an ocean of pure happiness. And so that's the only thing that can fully fill up this empty ocean of desire, of desire for happiness that we have within us. And so once you achieve that, your heart's full. And you will not envy or desire anything that anyone else wants, because you have everything that you ever wanted.
But even that desire seems to be enough. It says here, it doesn't say that when you go back to Godhead.
No, but it doesn't matter if you go back to Godhead, if you have Krishna Bhakti in this world. There's no need to go back to Godhead. That's why it says that for the material, yesterday also, very good, in this class, this devotee is asking Ranath Maharaj, who's saying that sometimes the struggle to conquer our anarthas or to fight against our anarthas takes up most of our day. And it's very difficult, it's very miserable that you're constantly fighting this enticement, this desire, constantly. Is there going to be a point where we can simply relish our devotional service and be free from this anarthas? And Radhanath Maharaj comes back without, like, I thought he's going to talk about, yes, once you achieve the platform of bhava or prema, right? No, he says that you are trying to enjoy your Krishna consciousness. This is wrong. This is a wrong mindset. For the devotee, he's not interested in liberation. He's not interested in anything. Right? As Mahaprabhu says in Shiksastakam, it doesn't matter. You can treat me harshly. It doesn't matter. I can stay here in this material world, or I can go back to Godhead. Once one has Krishna prema, it's no longer about him. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if one is going back to Godhead. It doesn't matter, right? Constant tribulations come, as Queen Kunti says, right? Let the punishments, let all the problems come again, because then we had your association. When everything is good, we do not remember you, we do not keep in your association. So I'd rather go through everything again, I'd rather go through the forest again, if we have your association. So for that person who has Krishna Bhakti, who has the only desire for Krishna Bhakti, right? Even those people who are fully Krishna conscious, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? He still had separation. So the desire for Krishna Bhakti was even there in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even though he has Krishna Bhakti. So there's no other desire except more Krishna Bhakti, except more devotional service, except more Krishna consciousness. And therefore they're free from envy, because they have no other desire. That ocean is full, and they have no other desire apart from more of the same. Does that make some sense for you? Yeah, only when you have zero other desires, because you have tasted bhava, prema, then you will understand that there's nothing else of value in this material world. Only when you've been given something higher, then you fully distaste what you had before, your desires from before, then you'll be free from envy, because no one else has anything else. Right? So that purport is very perfectly putting it, that only when one has that, then envy is gone. Because you realize nothing, everything else is just broken glass. Everything else is just broken glass, like the pastime of Sanatana Goswami with the touchstone. Right? The Brahmana went, got the touchstone. Yeah, I got the touchstone. Wait a minute. If he was keeping this in the trash, what does he have? Right? If this was in the trash, what does he have that's so precious that he was able to just throw this in the trash pile in the corner? Then Sanatana Goswami gave him the holy name.
But first he had to throw the touchstone.
Exactly. Throw it into the river. Exactly. This is such an important part of the pastime. Give up your attachment to material desires. Give up your attachment to thinking that there's something else, and fully surrender to the instruction of the spiritual master. And whatever he says, take with wholeheartedly. So that's an important part of that story. First, throw it away and come back. First, go throw it away and come back. So he had to have faith. He had to have faith. He had to have that shraddha, right? The shraddha mulle sudanam, right? Only the cost is faith. So because he was able to pay that faith by throwing the stone away to Sanatana Goswami, he gave him that faith. Sanatana Goswami gave him the holy name. Shraddha mulle sudanam. Sheha te te bhikhai. That's the only thing that Nityananda Prabhu is asking. Shraddha mulle. Only the payment of faith. But yeah, such a beautiful purport of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, envy is there as long as we think that someone else has something of value. But when our desire is pure and only Krishna consciousness, because we have tasted bhava prema, then there's no fall down. Then it all makes sense. Right? From the platform of bhava and prema, there's no fall down, because one has no interest of anything else in this material world after tasting pure love of God. Until one has tasted pure love of God, yes, something else one may theoretically think can bring pleasure. It's like if one is eating sand and rocks his whole life and then tastes a gulab jamun, you're not going to eat sand and rocks ever again. But until you know what a gulab jamun tastes like, yeah, you might think, oh, this Moroccan sand might taste better, or the Egyptian sand might taste better, or this sand and that sand, oh, so tasty. But when one actually has something that's really tasty, they're like, oh, wow. It's like when I came here, I remember when I was really small having the breadsen, right? And I used to think, oh, so tasty. But I forgot after how many years of not having it. So when I arrived in Germany, anywhere I was going and getting breads, and oh, so good, so good, so good. And then Govindadev took me to the best bakery, right? And I had it there. And after that, I can't have from anywhere else because it's just horrible, it's soggy, dry, no taste, right? So when you have something that actually that much better, then it's like, oh, okay. Nothing else was ever any good. This is actually what's good. Make sense? Prabhu, you also had a question? No? Okay, we'll finish there. Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi.